tales. It's made up. There's no such thing, and it's a bunch of bull, And so I think it's a little of both. Because I'm going to tell you something, and this isn't classified or anything, but it's something I learned in the Navy. Everybody, I see closer here. Friends call me Vic. This is another episode of Sea Stories and Tall Tales. This one's going to kind of combine a tall tale, not that I've told, but I've heard. And I'm sure you've heard this too. I don't remember the name of the ship, but it was a story that's been repeated a lot. And it was a ship in World War II. And they claimed that they had some, it seemed like they said it was in Philadelphia or something. Or maybe that was the name of the ship. I don't remember. I don't recall. You could probably look it up. I probably should have looked it up before I'm telling the story. But the story about that ship is that they were experimenting with it, and they had some kind of high technology for the time. This new technology that they could make the ship invisible. And the technology that they were using was either electric or magnetic. And the way that story went is that when they were testing it, something went wrong, and some of the men, like on the deck, half of them would disappear. It's almost like, half their bodies it was like they were severed, but there was a half of it over here and half of it over there. That it was killing people, injuring people. People were screaming everywhere. People somehow melted into the deck or into the steel. They meshed together. Just all kind of weird stuff you hear about this. And I'm sure you've all heard this or heard parts of this somewhere before. I just don't recall the details of it. And it was kind of horrifying to hear, especially when I was real young. It was, like 10, 11 years old. It's kind of like, wow, what in the world are they doing? But then later, you're kind of like, it's just tall tales. It's made up. There's no such thing, and it's a bunch of bull, And so I think it's a little of both. Because I'm going to tell you something, and this isn't classified or anything, but it's something I learned in the Navy. As you know, I was a Navy electrician, and one of the things that we had, it was our equipment on the ship that we're responsible for, and I got qualified for it, was something called the degaussing system. And the degaussing system was designed where you had these coils that went around the ship. And you had one, like if the hull was going, like ships going across here, it went around like this, and it was horizontal, with the ship. And then you had another coil that went around like this, and this vertical. And then you had coils at the quarter decks, they called it, in the front and the back, that were kind of squared like at the front and the back. And then you had a coil that went around the center like this, or if you can see what I'm doing, kind of like that. So you had all these coils that were around the ship, and you had these DC generators, and you would induce, or you would put DC current through these things. And if you don't understand electricity, I'll just try to give you a little quick little thing. Electricity, when it flows through a wire, it gives off a magnetism. I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not, but you could take like a wire, and you could take a clamp on amp meter and put it around, and it won't even have to touch. You could just go around it, and you've got like inductors in here, and it can measure the magnetism and stuff, and it can calculate it, to tell you how much current's flowing through something. You can't see it, but it's there. It's a magnetic field. And so the more current and all you put through, or less current you put through, you're adjusting the magnetic field that these coils are putting out. And all ships have this. At least all the ships that I knew about had that. with the exception maybe minesweepers, because I think a lot of the minesweepers might have had wooden hulls, and maybe they wouldn't need that. I don't know, but our ship had that. And so, what's the purpose of this? Well, that is designed to make the ship magnetically invisible. Okay? So what that means is you got a ship is a huge piece of steel, right? And that steel has a magnetic signature. Okay? It has a certain amount of magnetism, and it's a magnetic signature. The earth has magnetism. Okay? When the ship sails through the water, it disturbs the natural magnetic field of the earth. Different areas of the world, the field is different. Okay? It's not the same everywhere you go. So the point of the degaussing system is you're trying, and we had all these charts depending on where we were in the world. And this is one of the things I had to do. When we were on deployments and stuff, we would, be out at sea. We'd get at a certain point, as we start getting into the South Pacific or something, we'd cross into an area. Then we would be notified. And so then they would, like if I was up in the shop or something, we'd get a notification, say, okay, EM2, you need to go down there and set degaussing. So I'd go down there and get on the little headset and everything, and they would tell me, okay, we're in this zone. And I'd look it up in the book, and I would set all the coils to have a certain amount of current through each coil, based off the book. Once a year or every other year, we would go through what they call a degaussing range off of Point Loma, California, and the ship would sail through it, and we would set everything, and it would measure us when we went through, and if we weren't right, we would calibrate everything based off of that. And then we would figure out what our new numbers were, so that we could do it accurately. So what the purpose of that is that you're trying to induce a voltage or a magnetism in the ship that does not disturb the magnetism of the earth as you sail through it. So you're trying to get the ship's magnetism to match the magnetism of the earth. And so what's the point of this? Well, mines. A lot of mines are designed to go off when there's a magnetic disturbance. So the mines are out there floating around, and when a ship comes close enough to it, it disturbs the magnetism around the mine, and that triggers the mine to explode. For a mine to be effective, it's better for it to explode close to the ship, but not right up next to the ship. So there's a certain distance away from the ship that if it explodes, the force of the explosion pushes more water, and that water can do a lot more damage than just the force of the explosion. So if you actually had to run into the mine for it to go off, it would do a lot less damage than if it actually exploded out further and it had the pressure of all this water. So they would set these things to where if there was a magnetic disturbance, they would set the sensitivity of it, the mine would go off and it would be more effective. So we were trying to make the ship magnetically invisible so that we wouldn't set off mines. And that was the purpose of it. That was something that they were messing around with in World War II. So it wasn't really all that real high of a tech. And it wasn't really all that high tech about it, other than the fact that they were measuring magnetism and they kind of figured out how to make it blend in. So magnetically, the ship couldn't be detected, or it left less of a footprint and be less likely to set off mines. So, with all that being said, they did have something to make the ship invisible, but it was making the ship magnetically invisible. And that's probably what they were testing. And I could see where they may have had some sort of an accident. Maybe, the insulation on some of these coils failed and there was a lot of DC current. Maybe it did injure some people. It could have caused, some injuries if there was some sort of a malfunction. Because it was experimental. I mean, our ship, when they build it with these coils and stuff in place. The ship in the story, they were trying to add stuff like this to a ship that was already constructed. So I could see where they could probably have some kind of an accident. And, over the years and over the story being told, the accident got worse and, things kind of change and it's more gruesome than it really was. And people remember the part about making the ship invisible and they forget about the magnetic part. And I think that's probably the explanation of that story.